On the morning of my supposed death, my son invited me on a family boat ride. By sunset, I was at the bottom of the Mississippi, betrayed by my own blood. But he and his wife made one mistake. I survived. And now while they bury an empty casket and smile for the cameras, I'm watching, waiting, ready to tear down the empire they tried to steal. But let's start from the beginning. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 64, a widow and mother to one son. 1 year ago my husband Richard died, leaving behind a logistics empire we'd built from scratch. When he passed, the company became mine. Not his brothers, not the board, not anyone but me. I'm the sole owner of nearly $2.9 billion and the responsibilities that come with it. And since then, my life had been a balancing act between grief, recovery, and the desperate hope that my son still wanted me as his mother, not just his bank. So when David called that morning himself, no secretary, no assistant, my heart lifted. He hadn't phoned me directly in months. His voice was warm, almost boyish. Mom, let's celebrate your recovery from surgery. Just you, me, and Jessica. A family outing. We've got the boat waiting. I should have heard the warning in his tone. I should have felt the insincerity creeping under those words. But loneliness is a cunning liar. After weeks of hip replacement therapy, I wanted nothing more than to believe my son cared. I slipped into the navy dress Richard used to adore, the one he said made my eyes brighter, and called a cab to the Algiers Point Marina. The boat gleamed in the early light, 40 feet of polished white, the kind of luxury that whispers of money spent too easily. David greeted me with a hug staged for appearances, while Jessica watched from the deck, smiling sharp as shattered glass. The river looked calm, its surface sparkling like a sheet of glass, but I had no clue danger was circling beneath, waiting for me to let my guard down. And when it came, it was my own family who shoved me into its arms. The water was merciless. The cold slammed into me, stole the air from my lungs, and the soaked dress dragged me under like an anchor. Panic clawed at my chest. My hip throbbed, my ribs burned, and a cruel thought flickered. This is how it ends, after everything, just another mistake on the water. But I've never been one to go quietly. I kicked off my heels, fought my way upward, and burst into the air, gasping just in time to see the boat gliding away. Jessica was already on the phone, her voice drifting faintly across the water. David never looked back. Not once. The betrayal was colder than the river itself. I tried to scream, but my voice cracked and vanished into the vast Mississippi River. The current carried me farther, my arms straining against the drag of the dress and the weight of heartbreak pressing into my ribs. For a heartbeat I nearly gave up. Then salvation. A rusty fishing trawler rounded the bend, cutting across the sunlit water. A man in his 60s, stocky and weathered by a lifetime at sea, leaned over the railing. His eyes narrowed, then widened. "Hold on, lady," he shouted. "Ethan, get the rope." 2 strong pairs of arms, his and a lanky teenager's with the same sharp jawline, hauled me aboard moments later. I collapsed onto the deck, coughing river water, shivering so hard my teeth rattled. "Holy hell," the man muttered, wrapping me in a wool blanket that smelled of salt and smoke. "You trying to get yourself killed?" I shook my head, still gasping. "No. My family, they tried to kill me." He studied me in silence, gray eyes sharp, not condemning, calculating. The boy Ethan looked horrified yet curious. "I'm Jack Harris," the man said at last, his voice gravelly. "This here's my grandson. We're out early to catch stripers, but looks like we caught something else instead." I clutched his arm. "Please. You can't tell anyone you found me." "Not yet." Jack's brow furrowed. "That's a hell of a thing to ask, lady. You in some kind of trouble?" "Not trouble," I said, my voice trembling. "A war. And if they know I survived, they'll finish the job." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Sometimes the right thing ain't what the law says. Fine. You stay quiet. We'll say it was driftwood we saw. But you'd better tell me the whole story." I pulled the blanket tighter, my body still shaking but my mind sharpening with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. "They think I'm dead," I whispered. And I'm going to let them think so until I destroy them. For days later I stood hidden beneath the shadow of an old oak at the edge of Metairie Cemetery, a borrowed black veil covering my face. From where I was, I had the perfect view of my own funeral. The casket, silver, polished, absurdly expensive, was empty, a showpiece for the living rather than a resting place for the dead. Rows of chairs held mourners, some genuine, some just there for the spectacle. At the center stood David and Jessica, flawless in black. They played the part of grieving family so perfectly it could have been theater. David's eyes glistened as he accepted condolences. Jessica dabbed her cheeks with a silk handkerchief. To anyone watching, they were the picture of loss. To me, they were liars standing on a stage built from my supposed death. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. Reporters hovered at the edges, cameras clicking. I'd already seen the headlines. According to the Times-Picayune, I'd fallen victim to the cruel unpredictability of age. The papers quoted David saying I'd been showing worrisome signs of confusion in the months before the accident. Jessica went even further, sniffling into microphones about how she'd feared poor Evelyn might wander off one day and never come back. They had their story locked tight. I wasn't a woman betrayed by her own flesh and blood. No, I was a doddering old lady who tragically drowned after losing her way. I swept my gaze over the crowd, searching for the faces that had filled my life for decades. There was Mrs. Walker from next door, openly sobbing. Old friends from my church group sat stiff in their seats, eyes red. Even the surgeon who'd replaced my hip was there, head bowed in quiet respect. They were truly mourning me. That was the part that cut the deepest real grief, genuine love, twisted into fuel for David and Jessica's lies. And then I saw what wasn't there. My longtime lawyer? Absent. My accountant? Missing. My financial advisor, the one who'd guided Richard and me through every deal for 35 years, nowhere in sight. Why wouldn't the people entrusted with my billions show up at the funeral of the woman they supposedly served? Unless, of course, they were playing a different part in this performance. As the pastor droned on, Jessica nestled her head against David's shoulder, tilting her face just so for the cameras. She looked beautiful, tragic, almost saintly, like she was auditioning for sainthood instead of sympathy. And that's when it hit me. Every tear was an investment in her new life as the grieving heiress. My fingernails dug into the rough bark of the oak tree. Let them bury an empty casket. Let them paint me as senile and lost. While they mourned a ghost, I stood there breathing, watching, alive, and getting angrier by the second. That night, the echoes of my own funeral still clattering around inside my chest, I made a decision. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to go back to the house that used to be mine. Jack drove me to Garden District, where the Carter home stood like a monument to everything Richard and I had built. 35 years of laughter, arguments, Christmas mornings, and whispered talks after midnight had lived inside those walls. Now it belonged to David and Jessica. Signed over after Richard's death because I'd thought family still meant something. The street was hushed when we pulled up near midnight. Porch lights flickered here and there, but no movement. My hand shook as I slid the old brass key into the back door. David had never asked for it back. Why would he? As far as he knew, I was at the bottom of the Mississippi. The click of the tumbler sent a shiver through me. The house smelled wrong the moment I stepped inside. Expensive cologne, harsh cleaning agents, something synthetic masking whatever truth lay beneath. It was no longer my home. I moved slowly through the rooms, gripping the flashlight Jack had handed me. The furniture was draped in white sheets, but underneath I caught glimpses of new leather couches and an entertainment system far bigger than anything I'd ever let Richard buy. Bowls of imported fruit sat on the counters next to wine bottles with labels I didn't recognize. This wasn't a weekend place anymore. Someone lived here full-time. In the kitchen the refrigerator hummed, stocked with fresh groceries delivered weekly. Organic vegetables, French cheeses, and baby formula. My pulse spiked. But it was the office upstairs, Richard's old study, that held the real truth. His once orderly desk now lay buried under papers and neat stacks of binders. On top sat a folder stamped in bold black. Project Evelyn. I slid through my veins. Inside were medical reports, page after page of supposed cognitive decline, memory lapses, and hallucinations I'd never had. Some bore forged signatures. Others were authenticated by doctors I'd never met. There were notes about staged incidents, a forgotten appointment, mixing medications, wandering at a dinner party. I remembered those moments. Jessica whispering the wrong date. David switching pill bottles. Every mistake had been engineered. They weren't just trying to steal my fortune. They were rewriting me. My hands shook as I snapped photos with the disposable camera Jack had given me. And then it happened. A sound. Soft. Fragile. Unmistakable. A baby crying. I froze, every nerve in my body straining. A faint light flickered upstairs. The cry drifted from the second floor. Thin but real. Curling through the hallways like a ghost. David and Jessica had no children. They'd always insisted they were too busy, too ambitious. So whose baby was in my house? And why were they hiding it? I froze in the hallway, my heart slamming against my ribs. The cry came again, thin, pleading, echoing off the walls like it belonged to a ghost. For a split second I wondered if grief and exhaustion were playing tricks on me. But no. The sound was real. I crept up the staircase, each step creaking like a warning. The cries drew me to the guest bedroom. The one Jessica had always complained smelled old. The door stood slightly ajar. I nudged it open and my breath caught. The room had been transformed into a nursery. The wallpaper was gone, replaced by soft pastel clouds. A white crib with a gauzy canopy stood against the far wall. Shelves held rows of stuffed animals and brand new toys that glimmered in the dim light. And there, wrapped in an expensive blanket, lay the source of the cries. A newborn, no more than a few weeks old, his tiny face flushed with need. My knees nearly gave out. David and Jessica had never said a word about a pregnancy. I'd seen Jessica only days ago on the yacht, slim, radiant, not a woman who'd just given birth. So whose baby was this? I stepped closer but froze when headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed outside. Bang! My blood went cold. They were home. Clutching the disposable camera to my chest, I darted down the stairs. By the time their voices floated through the front door, I'd slipped out the back into the garden. I didn't stop running until I reached the corner where Jack's pickup waited. I tumbled inside, breathless, heart racing. "There's a baby," I gasped. "In the house. A newborn." Jack's brows shot up. "What?" "They're hiding a child. I don't know whose, but it isn't theirs." His face hardened as the engine rumbled and we pulled away from the curb. "That's not just greed anymore, Evelyn. That's something darker." He was right. And I needed answers. The next morning Jack took me to meet someone he trusted. A private investigator named Megan Brooks. A sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a detective's patience. She sat listening as I spilled everything. When I mentioned the baby, her expression tightened. "I know a place that fits this pattern," she said finally. "A private clinic across the state line. Discreet. Expensive. Specializes in surrogacy arrangements." Within days Megan confirmed what I feared. The baby in my old house had been born only 3 weeks earlier. The surrogate mother, a 17-year-old runaway named Maria Lopez from Mississippi, had died suddenly during delivery. No family. No inquiries. "Healthy girl, no complications," Megan said, sliding a file across the table. "But the records say cardiac arrest. Too convenient." I stared at Maria's photo, a child herself, smiling shyly at the camera. My hand shook as I traced the edges. David and Jessica hadn't just stolen my fortune. They had stolen a life. "Someone arranged this," I whispered. "David and Jessica don't have the brains for something this elaborate." Megan nodded. "Exactly. Surrogacy clinics don't just let minors walk in. There's a handler, a fixer, someone with power who makes it all look legal on paper." The next week she dug deeper, combing through property records, legal filings, and the names tied to that so-called clinic. One name kept surfacing, a shadow at the edge of every document. Victoria Hayes, an estate attorney in Baton Rouge. Polished, respected, terrifyingly efficient, Hayes specialized in family transitions. On paper, she helped wealthy families manage inheritance. Underneath, Megan uncovered something darker. Dozens of elderly clients dead under suspiciously convenient circumstances. She's running a network, Megan said, spreading surveillance photos across Jack's kitchen table. Your son and daughter-in-law are just pawns. Hayes recruits greedy relatives, manufactures evidence of mental decline, and clears the path for inheritance. I've tracked at least 20 suspicious deaths tied to her clients in the past 5 years. The photos chilled me. Victoria stepping out of luxury cars, shaking hands with men in suits, slipping into hospitals and private clinics. Always present, never directly tied. So she's the mastermind? I murmured, my voice low. And David delivered me right into her hands. Megan tapped a grainy photo of Victoria leaving the same clinic where Maria had died. Hayes was there that night. Witnesses say she oversaw the birth personally. The baby was delivered. Maria never walked out. I pressed a hand to my mouth. The betrayal of my son had already cut deep. But this was monstrous. They think you're dead, Megan continued. Hayes is moving fast. She's pushing probate through the courts. Within weeks your estate will belong to David, Jessica, and that baby. My throat tightened. She'll kill again if she has to, won't she? Megan's eyes didn't flinch. She already has. And if she learns you survived, she won't stop until you're gone for good. The weight of it settled over me like a shroud. My son wasn't just blinded by greed anymore. He was caught in something bigger, darker. A machine that preyed on the weak, that disguised murder as inheritance. For the first time since I'd been shoved into that freezing river, I felt real fear. And it wasn't just for me anymore. It was for that baby upstairs in my old house. A child alive but living on borrowed time. The choice came to me one sleepless night at Mrs. Lee's kitchen table, the air thick with the smell of her jasmine tea. I realized I couldn't keep hiding in shadows. Victoria Hayes wasn't going to vanish on her own. If she was the spider at the center of this web, then I had to walk into it myself, face her, trap her, drag her into the light. Megan tried to talk me out of it. Jack flat out begged me not to do it. But Hayes was too insulated, too careful. She only moved when she smelled weakness, and if she thought I was broken and desperate, she'd show her face. She'd talk. And when she did, I'd finally have the evidence I needed to bury her. The plan we built was reckless, terrifying, borderline insane. But it was the only way. I would confront David and Jessica inside my old house, the house that had been stolen from me. Megan had already planted recorders in every corner. Tiny blinking eyes that would capture every word. Jack would be close, waiting with the federal agents Megan had alerted quietly, carefully. The moment Hayes revealed herself, they'd strike. That evening, just before dusk, I slipped through the back door of the Garden District house. My pulse thundered as I lowered myself into Richard's old armchair, the one he'd sat in every morning, rustling his newspaper while sipping coffee. That's where I waited. That's where I wanted them to see me. The door opened right at 7. David stepped inside, jingling keys in his hand, until they clattered to the floor. His body locked stiff, his face bleaching white. "Hello, darling," I said, my voice calm though every muscle trembled. "Did you miss me?" For a moment silence hung heavy. Then David staggered back a step, clutching the wall as if the ground had tilted beneath him. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking. This isn't possible. I saw you go under. You can't." His words cracked, and for a flicker of a second I saw my son, not the traitor. His eyes brimmed with something dangerously close to guilt. "Mom, please," he choked out, his voice desperate, almost pleading. "It wasn't supposed to go like this. Hayes said it would be clean, painless. I never." Then Jessica's scream ripped through it, sharp and raw, the kind of sound that makes glass rattle. She clutched David's arm, eyes wide with terror. And David, my son, just stared at me like I was some ghost that had clawed its way out of the river to drag him under. But it was the third figure who stole the air from the room. Victoria Hayes stepped inside. moving with the cool confidence of someone who believed the world bent to her will. Her tailored suit was perfect, her expression sharper than steel. "Well," she said, her tone like a knife, "so the woman refuses to drown." She laid a leather portfolio on the coffee table, her glance brushing over me as if I were nothing more than an irritating delay. "This is unwise, Mrs. Carter. Very unwise." I folded my hands in my lap, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Is it? Or is it unwise for you to sit here and admit what you've been doing?" Her lips stretched into a thin, cruel smile. "You think you've cornered me? I provide a service. Families want relief from their burdens. I make it clean. Legal. Call it estate acceleration. The old pass peacefully. The young inherit sooner. Everyone wins." Her words oozed poison dressed as reason. David swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Jessica clung tighter, her eyes darting between Victoria and me. I leaned forward, my voice low, cold. "You've murdered people. Dozens. And tonight the world will hear you say it." The microphones, hidden under lamps and behind bookshelves, blinked red in the dark. Hayes didn't notice. And then it happened, chaos crashing down in a storm. The windows shattered. Federal agents stormed through every entrance, their boots pounding against hardwood, their shouts cracking like gunfire. The metallic snap of handcuffs rang louder than church bells. Hayes bolted for the kitchen, her heels slipping across polished floorboards. She made it barely 6 feet before 3 agents took her down hard, her leather portfolio exploding open like a gutted bird, papers scattering in the air. David and Jessica sat frozen on the couch, their masks stripped away. What was left were pale faces, quivering hands. "Victoria Hayes," an agent barked, voice like iron. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, wire fraud, and elder abuse." Her lips curled into a cold smirk, but she said nothing. Then the agents turned to David and Jessica. The silence in that room pressed heavier than any scream. They read my son his rights, and his eyes darted to me. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it had. God help me, it had." The legal storm that followed stretched for months. Hayes's empire crumbled piece by piece. Doctors, lawyers, even a probate judge fell with her, dragged into the light. Victoria Hayes herself was convicted on every count: conspiracy, fraud, murder. Life without parole. David and Jessica took plea deals. 25 years for him, 20 for her. Stripped of the fortune they'd tried to steal, left with nothing but time to sit with their shame. But the most important battle wasn't fought in a federal courtroom. It was in family court, where I stood cradling Maria Lopez's child in my arms. The room was quiet. No cameras, no reporters, no spectacle. Just a judge, a stack of papers, and a baby who had already lived through too much. His dark eyes fixed on mine with a trust that felt heavier than any oath. "His name will be Noah Lopez Carter," I told the court, my voice steady. "Lopez for his mother, who gave her life for his. Carter for the family that will protect him, not exploit him." The gavel struck. Custody granted. Now, 5 years later, Noah fills my house with the noise of childhood. Running feet, endless questions, the kind of laughter that heals old wounds. He knows the truth in the way a child can understand it. That his birth mother was a brave girl who wanted him safe, that the people who tried to claim him weren't family at all, just thieves lost to greed. One day he'll learn the rest. But not yet. Sometimes, late at night, I tuck him in and find myself staring out the window, remembering the river. The cold shock. The current dragging me down. The moment betrayal almost ended me. And then I glance back at Noah, safe, smiling in his sleep, and I know why I survived. Bloodlines didn't save me. Money didn't save me. Choice did. The choice to keep fighting. The choice to love. The choice to stand when the current tried to pull me under. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who holds you up when you're sinking. It's who chooses you every single day. And Noah, he chose me without saying a word. That, more than billions, more than revenge, is the only inheritance worth passing on.